I think Seattle's going to win the game, but I wrote an article for ESPN.com's Insider section. It's going to be posted. I think tomorrow's one's going to be posted. It's going to be up this weekend. And it talked about how when you look at how Seattle did against top 10 rushing offenses, how Seattle's defense did, they did a very poor job. They allowed 100 or more yards, actually, if you include Green Bay as one of those top 10 offenses, and they were like 1 yard away from being in the top 10 if you include them. Seattle allows 100 or more yards to those teams on 5 out of 8 occasions, and they're 3-2, or that's where their losses come from. And this is just something that they've struggled with. In fact, if you look over the past couple of years, when Seattle gives up 100 or more yards, they're 11-7. When they don't, they're 18-0, but they're 11-7 when they give up 100 or more yards to the opposing team. So I think there's a path for Green Bay to succeed.
Well, if that's the case, and they did run for over 100 yards last week against Dallas, this is a much different defense here. You know, is this a game plan where Green Bay is going to have to do something non-typical in terms of getting the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands to win the game?
I still think I think that it's going to come down to whether or not they can't run the football. I don't think if Green Bay can't run the football, they won't win the game. But mind you, Rodgers, even for all those mobility issues last week, and you think, okay, well, he's not going to be able to run it, he's not going to be able to get out of the pocket. He still, even though he only had 4 passes out of the pocket, ESPN stats information said he has 4 passes out of the pocket, but 2 of them go for touchdowns. Makes him only the 3rd quarterback since 2009 to throw 2 touchdown passes outside the pocket in a playoff game. So Rodgers can still hurt the Seahawks from outside the pocket enough, I would think, to do that. But that's the one way you can beat Seattle is via the running game. Their pass defense, you don't want to go against that if you don't have to. But they have had troubles against the running game at times over the past couple of years against power rushing teams. It's the one thing that they excel matchup-wise in every other aspect. But if you take a power rushing team against them, they're good, not great.
Let me ask you a little bit about Seattle's personnel on defense. One is a free agent, Byron Maxwell. A lot of Eagle fans keep asking about him. You know, is he a guy that you think Green Bay will go after? What kind of player is Maxwell? Would he be a player in free agency if you're Philadelphia that you'd be taking a look at?
Maxwell, I have him as a red-rated cornerback, which means he's a guy you want to avoid. That's the best rating you get at cornerback. But it's partly because of that system that they play. And remember, he missed last week because he had some respiratory issue. They were even saying something. I was reading something about something pneumonia related or something. It's pretty significant. And if he's at 100%, I got no problem saying don't throw at him because he's probably almost as good as Richard Sherman. But if he's not at 100%, he would be a guy you could go after. I also say that Jeremy Lane is a guy you could go after for the Seahawks. In fact, anybody playing their nickel position, that's their weakness. Although it's not a terrible weakness. It's not a place you're gonna make a great living. But with as strong as Green Bay is at the slot position, I think that's where they're going to throw a lot of their passes.
You know, Green Bay, their defense is not great. Where's Seattle's offense matching up with Green Bay's defense? I mean, a lot of people, I think, look at Russell Wilson and they'll either call him a game manager, or I've heard people, earlier on our midday show talking about how, well, he's never been behind, really. He hasn't had to fight his way back into games. Is Russell Wilson a guy that needs to have a big game against the Packers, or can they beat them in other ways?
I think he does have to have a big game, and they're right. He hasn't had He hasn't had the lead a team. In fact, if you go back to his college days in Wisconsin and see that everything was situationally good for him there, just like it is in Seattle. Strong running game, strong defense, some favorable matchups and things. So it wasn't. You have to go back to his NC State days to find a time where he didn't have that situation, and people didn't think he was an elite quarterback back then. They thought he was a really good quarterback, but when he transferred to Wisconsin, I remember looking at the tape going, this guy's a good quarterback, but we're not talking, we're just talking Heisman Trophy winner. You wouldn't think that'd be the case, but I think he's going to have a good game. I worry about their passing game because they just lost Paul Richardson last week, and that's so their passing game is not is not an elite lineup. So if they fall behind, I think it'd be a situation for them. I would be Seattle. I'd be worried about getting a repeat of what happened when Dallas came up there earlier this year. Power running game, other team gets the lead. Now Seattle can't play that type of ball that it used to playing at home. It's the only loss they had at home this year, and Green Bay is not quite as powerful as Dallas in the running game, but they are capable of pulling off that kind of a game plan.
Well, this one should be interesting. They played before. That was opening night, way back on September the 4th. What's different about these two teams from opening night?
The Packers' rushing attack is a lot better. They were having trouble early on getting the ball moving on the ground, but they ran for over 100 yards in 12 of the last 13 games and the last 9 straight. So they've got their running offense in where it needs to be. And against the Seahawks, they really didn't. And I think that, mind you, you're trading off a healthy Aaron Rodgers in Week 1 versus a guy who's banged up coming into this game. Although he's listed as probable, so maybe the calf injury might not be as bad as it was last week, and he was listed as questionable. But those are the big differences. Packers can run the ball better, but Rodgers isn't quite as good. And that actually might be if you had to pick, one weakness, a trade-off of strengths and weaknesses, that might be one they would pick.
All right, KC, let's flip over to the other game here. It's obviously, the old head Brady against the new guy Luck, and a lot of people look at Luck and what he did last week was, all right, that was an upset here, but can he pull off 2 upsets in a row? The teams, the two teams have played a couple of times, and Luck has not fared very well against Brady. Why would that change this time around, if at all?
If the Colts defense can play like it did last week, although when you look at how the Colts defense played against top 10 passing offenses, their numbers were abysmal. You can pick, terrible completion percentage, terrible total QBR, touchdown interception ratio was bad. They really almost didn't have a good game against the top 10 passing offense, and the Patriots are a top 10 passing offense. Now, last week, they looked really good, but, and again, you're talking about an injured Peyton Manning, a significantly injured Peyton Manning. So Brady's not injured, and they'll be able to dink and dunk and throw the ball a lot. I just wonder if the Colts have enough firepower to keep up in a shootout, because I think the Patriots are going to be able to turn this game into, we're going to score 35 points at least, and I just don't know that the Colts match up that well or have enough firepower, because they don't have a running game to speak of. Even as good as Boom Herron's been playing of late, he still doesn't give them even what Ahmad Bradshaw gave him earlier this year. But I look at the receivers and say, if the Colts can't get the ball to T.Y. Hilton, let's say the Patriots take him out, who else you got? And I don't see enough firepower on the rest of their guys to keep up.
Yeah, and the one difference, I think we talked a little bit about this last week, Casey, is their defense, New England's, is much better than the defenses they've had the last couple of runs. It seems like last couple of years it's been Brady just kind of getting them there, and then, once you get to the playoffs, if you're not good enough, you're not going to win. This year it seems like they have Brady plus the defensive help to really carry them this time to maybe getting to that Super Bowl. How much better is their defense than in years past?
You look at their cornerback core and you go, okay, you've got Revis, you've got Browner, you've got Ryan, you've got Arrington. You've got 4 cornerbacks there. You go, all right, those are – I'm okay. I don't look at them and say there's a big weakness in any of them. I don't say, okay, they're all at least yellow rated or higher on my systems, and on the borderline of red rating, which means they're good, solid cornerbacks. You can put them across the board and say, I know this is not a liability. And you've got McCourty sitting over at free safety, and he can come up and play corner if you need him to. If the other team went to, say, a 5-wide receiver set, fine, have McCourty come up, and he can play cornerback if you needed him to. So, when you can go 5 deep in guys who can cover, it changes what you can do on defense. And in past years, New England always had somebody on their defense who, okay, this is a green-rated guy you can go after. This is somebody who you can target, and I just don't see that this year. So it's allowing them to do different things on defense than they were doing in the past few years.
KC Joyner's with us, ESPN.com's NFL Insider. Make sure you head to the Insider section. Check out KC's stuff on there on these 2 games. We'll get your thoughts on the winners coming up in just a bit, KC. But let's take a look at some other things going on around the NFL and get your take on them. First off, let's look at the draft stuff. So many people in this area are tired of hearing Marcus Mariota's name. He played pretty well in the national championship game. Not great. A lot of people seem like they're split on him. Will he be a good pro? Will he be a system quarterback? Chip Kelly's name and his name keep connecting. Would Marcus Mariota, if you're the Eagles, do you do whatever it takes to move up to try to go get him? Because a lot of people think that if he's not on the right team, he might not succeed.
Well, I do think he will have to be on the right team. You could say the same thing about Russell Wilson. Go put Russell Wilson on the Jaguars instead of putting him on the Seahawks. Go say the Jaguars. Go put him there and see what he does down in Jacksonville. He's not going to be anywhere near as successful as he's been up in Seattle. So you could say that about everybody. Here's the thing about Mariota. There's a thing called the Parcells rules. It's a list of 7 rules that Bill Parcells had that he used to say, okay, if I want a quarterback, if I'm looking to draft a quarterback, I want him to ideally pass all 7 of these rules, and he's still going to have to be, of the right size and strength and all. But Mariota checks out physically. He's, size-wise, he's fine. So The 7 rules are, though, be a 3-year starter, be a senior, graduate from college, start at least 30 games in your college career, win at least 23, post a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and have a 60% or higher completion rate. Mariota, 7 for 7. He gets every single one of those. I look at that and go, okay, he passes all the Parcells rules. He's of the requisite size. If you put him in the Kelly offense, you know he knows how to operate the Kelly offense. He's got fantastic intangibles. I'm looking at this going, if I'm the Eagles, I don't care. Do what Ernie Accorsi said and say it doesn't matter what the price is. There's no price that's too high to pay for a franchise quarterback. You put Mariota in the Kelly offense, he's a franchise quarterback. I do everything I have to get him.
Yeah, and by the way, one quarterback off the board as Caradell Jones has decided he's going to go back to school, probably a good decision. So, in your opinion, do you look at this as Winston and Mariota? Those are the 2 quarterbacks. Is there somebody else in this draft you like?
Nah, it's Winston and Mariota, and really, I think as long as you can tailor an offense to what Mariota can do, I take Mariota over Winston, even though Winston has the better physical skill set. I think you have to look at the entire structure of what these quarterbacks are and what they could do and what they would bring to a team. And I think if you put the right system around Mariota, you're going to be able to succeed. So unless you don't think you can put the right system around Mariota, I think he's the better of the 2. But yes, it's those 2, and then there's a drop-off, especially with Cardale Jones going back to the pros. And he would be physically as good as those guys. But, 3 games under his belt, he's got to get another year experience.
All right, let's look at, a lot of people around this draft time and free agency. In free agency, are there guys in the free agency, especially, you look at, you mentioned Maxwell at corner, Devin McCourty at safety. If you're Philadelphia, you need some secondary help. I don't know how much you've looked at the free agent list there, but are there guys that think stick out to you? Because obviously that's an area where they might need to look at in free agency with Bradley Fletcher, a guy whose contract is up and probably not going to be back. I
would put it this way. We've talked before this season about how if the Eagles – with the offense they play, you're putting a lot of pressure on your coverage and defensive coverage. You're putting a lot of pressure on the cornerbacks, and you've got to have better cornerbacks than what they have. The Eagles over the years have said, I remember, think back to Roderick Hood when they had, this is dating this a few years, but I remember when he was up there, and he was good enough as the third cornerback. He was of starter caliber, even though he was playing as the third cornerback. He was a starter caliber. He wanted to get paid starter dollars, and the Eagles made a decision that said, we're not going to pay him starter dollars. I didn't think it was them saying he wasn't good enough. They just said, that's not within our budget. We're not going to do that. And I'm wondering if, even though it's, Chip controlling the personnel side and Howie Roseman controlled the fiscal side, I'm wondering if Chip's going to be able to get the Eagles to change their budget structure, because I think this might be a case where they say, look, we normally don't pay big money for cornerbacks, but I would think they should take an approach of, we need to get somebody who's a veteran to upgrade our secondary, and then we go to get somebody in the draft. I don't think you just approach one or the other. We try and do both. So I would say, let's get a Maxwell, let's get a McCourty, let's get somebody who can come in here and make a good impact, maybe break our budget a little bit for that and find ways to save money elsewhere. But if they can't do that and they won't do that, then that's the kind of thing that says maybe the Kelly and Howie Roseman, that pairing, the way they've got it set up with the division of personnel control versus fiscal control, maybe that won't work out.
I want to get your thoughts on some of the coaching changes here. A lot of people scratching their head. Rex Ryan going to Buffalo. They had one of the top defenses, and yet they get rid of their defensive coordinator and bring in another defensive mind. Yeah, they'll probably stay good on defense, but is he going to advance them offensively?
No, I think he's got limitations there. They're going to have a good defense. I think this is a case of a young ownership group, or a new ownership group, I should say, trying to make a decision as to what they should do for head coach, and trying to. I don't want to say they just bought into his reputation and such, but it's one of those situations where you go, hey, you're looking at a coach who's had his best years behind him. I would have tried to hire somebody else, a younger coach, maybe a guy with an offensive mindset. But I think Rex will be successful up there. He might even make the playoffs and things, which would be, hey, maybe that's all they want us. Let's get a coach who can get us to the playoffs, and we'll think longer term down the road, because they're going to have to make some front office changes too. They're probably going to change some of the structure they have up there. But I guess I'll put it this way. I like it as a short-term signing, but I don't think they're going to be making a Super Bowl or anything, and I think in another few years they'll be coming up with another coach.
You got Todd Bowles going to the Jets. They were a team that struggled offensively. Does he help them change that?
He's been a very good defensive coach. He's been a very good assistant coach, and there are reasons to think that he could be a very good head coach too. But that's one of the things when you're transitioning from coordinator to head coach. It's a different skill set. I remember Mike Tomlin when he was the coordinator. He was a coordinator, I think, for one season. So, not great, not bad, just a decent coordinator. But you put him as a head coach, his skill set fits perfectly with being a head coach. So I think we'll find out something about both. I like what he does play calling, but I want to see what he does leading a team.
Yeah, and then, of course, you've got John Fox out in Denver. You've got the Bears job open as well. You've got the Atlanta job. Which of those jobs most – obviously, Denver would be, it seems like, the most attractive. But Peyton Manning, you don't know what's going on there. So which of those three jobs is the most attractive to you?
I would probably say, gosh, that's a tough one. With Chicago, it's you think about it. With Chicago, you've got a quarterback issue because Cutler, even though they've signed him long term, he's not. I don't think he's the guy. Atlanta, at least you get a franchise quarterback, but they've got some really significant personnel issues. They've got a really thin team. I would like Denver the best, but it's one of those things where Coach John Fox has all the success of the past few years. I know a lot of that had to do with Peyton Manning, but still, you have a lot of success, and then they fire you anyway. If I'm a head coach going in there going, I'm not sure about this. So from a personnel perspective, I still like Denver because I think they've got enough of the structure around them that they could, if they got a decent quarterback, they're still a playoff caliber team. I think that'd probably be the best situation, but all of them come with pretty big negatives.
You think Peyton's done?
If I had to guess, I'd say yeah, but I think it's going to be a matter of who takes over in Denver, and if somebody goes there who he can make an immediate connection with, maybe Geisher. If that's who goes there, then he comes back. But if he has to make another change, if they bring in a different coach and they're thinking, okay, we're going to make a full structure change for we're bringing in somebody for the long term, and Peyton would have to get adjusted to a new coach and everything, I think he might call it a day.
All right, KC Joyner, everybody here, the NFL playoffs. Let's get your picks. Green Bay and Seattle. Who do you got?
I still think Green Bay has a better chance of winning than most people think, but I think Seattle still wins that game because Rodgers is limited with the injury. If Rodgers were healthy, I might pick an upset, but I got to go Seattle on this one.
All right, Luck and Brady in the AFC Championship game.
Shootout. It's going to be it's a very high-scoring game, I think. But I think it's going to be more like a 42-28 game with New England getting the 42.
All right. So same with us here at the Sports Bash. We both have Seahawks and Patriots going to the Super Bowl, and we'll talk about that game next week with KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash 97.3. Check out ESPN.com in the Insider section for all of KC's articles, and check him out on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS for more on the NFL. All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great.